Hey, good evening, survivors. How are you? Happy Tuesday, and welcome to another healing conversation. We have a special guest tonight, Terence Tillman. I am waiting for him to come on. I think that is him. Okay, let me make sure I do this right. Hey, good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. I can't complain. How's everything
Good.
going?
Everything is good. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear
Oh,
me?
yes, very, very well.
Good, good.
Thank you. Thank you for being a part of this evening. How are you?
I'm good. I appreciate the invitation. It's a little bit, it's a little different now being on the opposite end. It's been a little bit, but yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely. How was your Tuesday so far?
good. Very, very good. Productive between work and a lot of other things. It's been pretty good, and I'm excited to have this conversation and see where we go.
Yes. So I see some people are coming on, and so I'm giving them a wave and welcome into the room. So, so let's get started. So, like
Yeah.
you said, this has been like a long time coming, right? So I've been on your podcast, I think, twice already. At some point,
Mhm.
I'm going to pause and tell a story, but
Okay.
not yet, right?
Okay.
So
Okay.
welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
And so I know that you are a certified life coach and a podcast host. So just tell um, our whoever's joining us this evening and the viewers,
Mhm.
excuse me, a little bit about yourself and something else that you want to share.
Yeah, I'm a certified life coach. I am host of Conversations of the Heart with T-Till. It's been an amazing journey. It's been about, I think it's going on 2 years. I think it's going on now. Just had a 2 year anniversary this year and going for three next year.
Mhm.
I have a merch line, the Tillman Unlimited collection.
Yes.
I've done speaking engagements and things like that. So yeah, the purpose of, just my podcast and just my platform in general, is just to really give voices to the voiceless to, there are a lot of people suffering in silence and so I just want to be able to have people come on and share stories and give information, positive
Mhm.
information for our community, right? And things that we can learn from. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
definitely.
It's a lot of heavy things going on. So, that's just what I'm about. That's just what my platform is about. And yeah, man, that's pretty much it.
Thank you for sharing that. So, let's talk about the certified life coach.
Mhm.
How did that come about, and how did that become a passion of yours? And when did you decide, like, hey, I'm really going to make this official?
So honestly, I feel like I've been coaching for years, but like it was in a very unofficial capacity. So, I'm the person that, a lot of people come to, for advice and breaking down strategies and really trying to figure out, what they want to do with their life going forward and things like that. So as far as I can remember, even in high school, what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Just having those types of conversations, those grown conversations with with my friends and really helping people unpack and deep dive into a lot of things, right? And so it really wasn't, I would say, a passion. It was just something that always came natural to me. Just wanted to be a
Mhm.
help and be a blessing to people, right? So
Mhm.
um, I think I went through just a pretty rough time. I believe it was 2013, 2014, 2015. That space, getting laid off of a job,
Mhm.
parents sick,
Mhm.
like it was just a lot of things that was going on, and I really didn't know. I said, what does Terrence really want to do? Like, what makes him the happiest, right? And where do I find purpose? And I started to really think about my purpose in my journey here, working in corporate America, was great and things like that. And I was focused on just, climbing the ranks, right? And just being into management. But then like once I got laid off, once I started seeing my parents get sick, just a lot of just different things, and I started to see how the real world was starting to hit. I started thinking a lot about purpose, and
Mhm.
and there was just a lot of times I was just in dark places, and I was like, just start to, I guess, research and go. I would go to these seminars, and I would go to these YouTube and see these motivational speakers, and then I was with a best friend. I would drag her with me, and we're sitting there, and and she said, you dragging me to a lot of these places. I'm here to support you. And she said, but to be honest with you, she said, I don't want to come to not one of these events until your name is on the bill. And,
Mhm.
and I was like, what you mean? Like, and she was like,
Mhm.
this is what you do all the time. You're happiest when you do this. And she's
Mhm.
like, you can do this like on a regular
Mhm.
basis. You can go out and speak. You can go out and be a blessing. Like this is what you do. But it's just
Mhm.
if you got to figure out how you want to do it. And then
Mhm.
like that's when like the wheels really started turning for me. You know,
Mhm.
um, and that's when I started, researching, classes for life coaching. What does that entail? Right? What was my niche? Things like that. And then, even before I really became a certified life coach, I went into working into the nonprofit sector. Started teaching classes on job readiness training.
Mhm.
So I was doing a lot of those things, and then I enrolled into life coaching classes to become a certified life coach, and then I started doing speaking engagements and women's shelters and
Mhm.
colleges and
Mhm.
high schools. And like
Mhm.
once I really started taking it seriously, then that's when things started to really kind of take off. And then I started doing my own videos on YouTube and stuff like that, and Instagram, and it just kind of went from there, and it just bubbled. And then if we're talking, probably I became a certified life coach in 2017.
Mhm.
So, fast forward later, in the pandemic, I started, my show, and then that's just become a part of it. So yeah, so
Wait,
it
wait.
just been,
You saying too much because you jumping ahead. You taking my
sorry,
question. So you
sorry,
gotta,
sorry, sorry about that.
gotta wait.
Apologies, apologies, apologies.
Okay,
Yeah,
so I wanna dive into when you were dragging your friend, right, to these events, right?
yeah, yeah.
And you were talking about um what is your purpose, right? And what do you really want to do? So of
Hmm.
course, as a life coach, you have people who come to you about that. So
Hmm.
when someone comes to you and says, like, I'm struggling to find my purpose, I'm struggling to find um, a place that I can feel comfortable in, a career that I can feel comfortable and say, I really want to do this and I have passion about it. So how do you assist them in finding their way?
For me, it's really about perspective. Like, like everybody goes through dark times and things like that, but it's really about finding like your purpose and your passion, like what makes you happy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, being in a job where I'm just not happy, or
Mm-hmm.
right, like, or not feeling fulfilled, that can cause a lot of stress on me every single day, right? There are people
Yep.
who are nurses that shouldn't be nurses. There are people that are working in skilled facilities, nursing facilities, that shouldn't be that, right? Like that's
Yep.
not what they love, right? But
Yeah.
but it's money, right? And so it's like I want to be a nurse. It's money now, but you have to have a passion for people. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've had experiences with nurses to where I saw who really, like, man, like they need to be that. Like this is what
Mm-hmm.
they do. Like it just oozes them, and it makes you feel so good. Like, or
Mm-hmm.
like the patient feels so good, even though they're in dark places. You know that that nurse needs to be a nurse, right? And then you've had some other nurses where you just
Nope, don't need to be a nurse.
like they really shouldn't be working with people, right?
Yeah.
Um, so for me, I said like what are you most happiest doing? Let's break that down. Like
Mm-hmm.
where do you find the most peace, right? And then what careers can align yourself with that, right? And really just finding out, one, like, why aren't they having peace? Like what's stopping them from living their best life? You know what I'm saying? And it could be an array of things. And the one thing that I do is certain things are above a life coach. Certain things are come from, where a mental health perspective, where
Mm-hmm.
they don't need me, they need a therapist. And then
Can you
then
talk
we
a
could work. Yeah, go ahead.
can you talk a little bit about that? Like when do you when do you know, like, okay, this is out of my range and I have to now refer you or give you a resource
Yeah,
um, to somewhere else? Can you talk a little bit about that?
because a life coach is geared to take you from your like from where you are to your future,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's all right. Like let's create a plan, right? Whether it be in career, personal, like where are you right now, and let's take you from here and formulate a plan and structure it so you can move forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
But with therapists, a lot of them need to deal with your past. They need to deal with things from that you've been dealing with, that you've been struggling with since you was a kid, since you've been 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, since you was
Yeah.
a teenager. Like you need to unpack those things,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there should be a licensed professional that should be able to help you with those things in tandem with me. So now you have somebody working with your past, and helping you breaking down walls to get to your future, because
Mm-hmm.
there could be certain things that's blocking you from having a successful relationship, right? And that's from your past, right?
Yeah.
So it's just there are certain things that needs to be broken and chopped into pieces, right? And so sometimes you need that mirror to yourself that says I need to change,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's really what therapy is. Like therapy is a really ugly mirror, right? And we need it. You know what
To
I'm
say
saying?
the least.
So
Yes.
before you can sometimes get to me, you need to really get through that part of it, or at least
Mm-hmm.
kind of have it hand in hand. And
Mm-hmm.
and and so I kind of look for those things too, is just to see, hey, you know what? I hear you talking a lot about something that has happened, or you're really struggling with this. Have you
Mm-hmm.
considered, before we go here, maybe you need therapy first. Maybe you don't need a coach
Wow.
first. I'm not just going to be here to take your money and just you're going to be stuck in the same place, right?
Mm-hmm.
That that you were. All right, thank you, and then all right, bye. No, it's about you. It's about progression. It's about your life. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to refer you first, right, to therapy, and then maybe afterwards, then you can come back to me, or maybe that we could work together. But I really don't like to work really too much if I see that there are things that you need to really work through, right, before you can get to me. So it's all about just really the people, right, and just making sure that they get the necessary help that they need, right. So that's kind of why I work hand in hand a lot of times with therapists.
So I think also what therapists get is that I think a lot of people go into therapy expecting a life coach, and they have to be told, hey, we are therapists and we are not life coaches. So if that's what you're looking for, so it also happens on that end as well.
Hmm.
Have you ever worked with someone who, at the same time, like simultaneously, who has gone to therapy and you continue to work with them as a life coach? Have you ever had that experience?
Yeah, yeah. So like they went and they got therapy, and working through the things that they need to work through, and then they would come tell me and say, hey, like it's hard. Like the therapy thing is hard. It's like,
Yes.
but it's helping them kind of unblock certain things in their lives, and in their hearts, in their minds, to where it's now they're understanding why things are happening, right? And now that they understand the why, it's breaking through now, so that in the future, it's like, so now when I'm going talking to them about this, it's like, oh well, I'm saying, look, based off, I talked to my therapist, and you know, we talked about this, and the third. So you know what? I think based off of that, I think this is why I've been struggling here. I'm like, ah. And they're like, so what do you think? And I'm like, you see, that's perfect, because when you first came to me, it
Mm-hmm.
it was just I need this and I want to get here,
Mm-hmm.
and you're
Mm-hmm.
pushing your way. You want to push your way here to the finish line, but man, like you don't even know the why that you're struggling, and you may not
Mm-hmm.
even, not that you don't care, but it's like I just want to get here.
Yeah.
So I care about the finish line, because I have this to do, I have that to do, I have, I'm just in this sprint, right? And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but you gotta slow it down, because it is a marathon. I know that's cliche, but it is more so of a marathon, not a sprint. And you can't play with your mental health. You know what I'm saying? Like it took years for you to build up certain walls. It took years for you to go through a lot of traumas. It's not going to break. It's not going to break fast. You know what I'm
Overnight.
saying? Right. And you got
Mm-hmm.
to understand your triggers and everything. Like, you got to understand you. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying? Before you can get to your future, because even if you get to a certain place in your future, like, you can still be held captive by your past. And you
Yes, you
might not
can.
even be able to be as successful as you would be if you didn't break through those barriers and break through those walls and unpack and heal. You know, so yeah.
Yeah, so I think people underestimate the why. The why is so crucial because it kind of connects of how you are functioning or why you are functioning the way that you are functioning, why you respond the way you respond. So the why is definitely underestimated, is kind of minimized, and it should be something that you want to look for, particularly if
Right.
you are seeking therapy. You want to be able to understand, well, why have I been acting this way? Why am I functioning this way? Why is my response, so inappropriate? So I think when we talk about therapy and seeking support and taking care of your mental health, the why is so important.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I, I want to go to your podcast, right? So
Yeah.
you said your podcast you birthed in 27. Did you say 2017?
No, that's when I became a life coach.
Life coach.
I birthed my podcast in the pandemic.
Okay.
Smack in the middle of the pandemic during a lot of
The
the
pandemic.
George Floyd protests and stuff like that. Like,
Okay.
yeah.
Yep. So let's talk
Mhm.
about that. Let's talk about like why you decided to, you know what, it's time to birth this right here, right now, in the midst of all the chaos and the confusion. Like you said, there's a lot of people that were hurting and continue to hurt.
Yep.
So talk about the your podcast and why you decided to do that.
Man, I never started out wanting to do anything with podcasting, or that was never my thing. One, if people who know, I had a, speech impediment. So like for me, even me doing speaking events really was a little like, oh my gosh, but I worked through
Hmm.
a lot to get to a place where I can stand in front of people and talk when you have a speech impediment. So for
Hmm.
me, doing an audio podcast was like, I'm good.
Yeah, no,
You know,
like I'm not doing
yeah,
that.
yeah, no. But one day, and I was just outside, and we couldn't go anywhere. I was outside, and me and my boy was texting back and forth. My boy Ronald Smith,
Hmm.
and and I was like, "You want to hop on live and talk about something?" Because we were both frustrated about a lot of different things that was going on, and he's texting me, and I'm texting him, and we just and I just said, "Why don't we just?" And when me and him talk, I mean, like, we kind of go for, like, we can go for hours. I was like. I was like, look, I'm hanging outside. I was like, you want to just hop on live and just give people what we talk about and call it a day? And he was like, okay, I'm not doing anything. You're not doing anything. Like, sure. So we hopped on that live, and it was we went 2 hours. Like, and I
Wow.
mean, and it was like, the perspectives that me and him were both giving, like, it was going from George Floyd to men and manhood, emotions, emotional intelligence, like anger, like it was powerful, right? But I didn't really, and people were just, commenting and this and that, but a lot of times, like, you don't really realize what's happening at that moment. You just going, you just talking like this, and you
Having
read the comments,
conversation.
yeah, and people are
Yeah.
joining in, and then I got start to get DMs and text messages. We need this. Like,
Wow.
it's different. Like, we see two men on here talking like this. Like, there's a lot of buffoonery out here. Like, like, there's a lot of stuff
Mhm.
that, it's just ignorant. But, like, this is what we need. Like, we need this. And I started to get a lot of those things. And I said, ah, even then I was like, oh, all right, but maybe I'll hop on like once every other month. I mean, whatever. Like, but then
Mhm.
the more I started to get these messages, like the next day, hey, Terence, listen, are you coming back on? And I was like, no, I'm not coming back on. And then that's when it just started to just snowball into a place where I was just like, all right, well, maybe let me, let me see what I can do. Like
Okay.
if this is what people really want, if this is the kind of content that people really not just want, but is needed, right? I think especially for community and things like that. And
Mm-hmm.
so, man, I started that podcast, and if people go back and see my first couple episodes or first few, I'm
Uh-huh.
talking about I had no haircut. The barber shops was closed. I was
Yeah.
looking, nah, I was looking like a 1970s like person, like big fro, like big beard, like it was horrible. Like
But wait, but everything was closed because the barber
I
shop was
know,
closed, the beauty salon was closed. You
I
can't get
know,
nothing because everybody that was coming up was probably busted and disgusted.
I
So like,
understand. But that's not normally me. So when people saw that, like, people were like, "Man, like you out here for real? Like you, this is you at your natural, like you
uh-huh.
natural out here."
Yeah.
And some people even said, "Yo, maybe you should have started this once, like maybe started once the barbershop's open." And I'm like, "Nah." I said because it's not about me. I said if I was doing this for for something else, I said, but this is about the messaging. This is about the
Mm-hmm.
people. This is about. It's not about how I look. Now I understand presentation is key. I said, but we in a pandemic also. I was like, if I'm gonna get a pass at any time, I said it should be now. I said
Yeah.
now in a few months from now when it's over, and if I'm still looking like this, then somebody call somebody because it's not it's not me. But you know what I mean. But I'm like, I'm not gonna wait to start something that
Mhm.
that people want. I was like, if this is what it is, so then I started to really just dive in and start trying to get guests. And man, like it's been an incredible journey from that time, to where I've gotten teachers, educators, Black history educators.
Mhm.
I mean, from people who have had kids that have had brain cancer to
Mhm.
entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
It's like it's been an amazing journey to hear the stories and to learn as much as I've learned, and to get the information out there, right? And people have the response that I've gotten is just, man, like there's a lot of vulnerability, like on your show, right? And
Yeah.
that's what it is. It's
Definitely.
raw. It's unscripted.
Mhm.
There's no like, oh, like I'm just gonna shoot you 20 questions so you know what I'm gonna ask you. No, like I want to have a free
Yeah.
flowing. This is gonna be a free flowing conversation, and
Yeah.
it's gonna be raw. It's not gonna
Yeah.
be just so let me just preempt. Like I need to write down my answers. So nah, like I want to know how you feel in that moment that we're
Mhm.
talking about the things that we're talking about, and
Yeah.
it's vulnerable and it's real, and it's been a blessing to really hear the experiences and growing, from the time that I started in the pandemic to now having influencers on the show, people who want to do the show, who hear about the show, who watch the show. Um, and it's just been great, but the biggest thing for me is above all that is that it's just helping people. And when people watch the show, I've got a lot of testimonies from people who have watched the show that have said that they've been blessed by the show. It's given them different perspectives. I remember I had one of my friend's little daughters watch the show, and I had on somebody who was a young, woman who was an engineer.
Mhm.
And my friend's daughter, she DM'd me and said, "I didn't even know women could be
Wow.
engineers. Thank you so
Wow.
much." Like, and I
Yeah.
and I was like, "That's what it's for." Like,
Mhm.
they're like those things, like impact things, to see women of color, and Black men expressing themselves. And that's the one
Mhm.
thing that I can say I'm really proud of about the show, is Black men really coming on the show and being vulnerable. They're talking about grief. They're talking about loss. They're talking about their emotions.
Mhm.
They're talking about where they could be better. Like and that to me, it has been one of the biggest blessings for me on this platform. But yeah, I'm not gonna
Mhm.
babble too much more. But yeah, that's pretty much the journey with the conversations of the heart. Yeah.
So definitely that's like an inspiration in itself that you even started in the midst of the pandemic. Like looking rough and all, like you said, that's not something that you would normally do. But that shows that it came from your heart, which is hence your title of your podcast, Conversations from the Heart.
Hmm.
So I want to go into mental health, right?
Hmm.
And I think I'm going to segue into mental health by telling the story. Okay. I think
Oh, okay.
that's what I'm going to do.
Okay.
So, because I want to talk about mental health and I want to talk about what mental health looks like after the pandemic, what mental health looks like for men. And I also want to I'm going to talk about boundaries really quick, which is going to lead me into the story because I think that was the topic that I was talking about. So for those, well, I think most people who are actually on, they probably do know the story, but I'm going to tell it anyway because it could be some of my followers who don't know, right?
Right.
So I was in Clubhouse and I was doing a talk, and the talk was based on boundaries. And Terence pops into the room and he unmuted himself and he's having a full conversation about boundaries and appropriate boundaries. And he's saying all the things that I'm like, oh man, like he like really thinks like I do in regards to boundaries and mental health. I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like, who is this person? So, like, fast forward, how long did it take us? How many months did it take us to finally realize? Was it like a month or
Yeah,
two later? Was it longer?
month or two. No, it was
It was
longer.
longer? Okay.
Yeah, like yeah, it was a yeah, it was definitely longer. Because we were just because we actually had conversations. I had you remember I
Yes.
had you on my show,
Yeah,
so
oh,
like
that's right. Okay. Yes.
yeah,
Yes. So
so
you
I
had
done had
invited
you on
me
my show
onto
by
your,
that time.
yes,
Yeah,
you had invited me onto your show. No, it was
right.
way longer. I don't think it was a year though. Was it a year?
I wouldn't say a year, but it was almost. It could have been almost 7 or 8 months.
Okay.
Yeah,
So long story
yeah.
short, somebody had saw, I think a relative of mine had saw the podcast interview because I posted it on my page, and come to
Mhm,
find out that that relative contacted you and you contacted me, and we
mhm.
came to find out that we were cousins. Who knew?
Yep, I didn't.
The world is small. The world is very small.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I came on your platform. I came on Clubhouse through a friend of mine.
yes,
That's
through
what like so
a
yeah.
mutual friend of
So I
ours.
just popped
Yeah.
in. I popped in because she was on your thing, and so I was like, oh,
Yep.
let me just pop in here, and then I just joined the conversation, and then
Yep.
we got to talking. It was great conversation, and no, I think a month or so later, I had you on my podcast. You told your
Yep.
story. It was amazing. No harm, no foul. We continue to talk. Great,
Yes.
great person. And I was like, okay. And then
Yep.
yeah, then months later or whatever, it was like crazy.
Yeah, it definitely was like, do you
Yeah,
know so and so? Yeah, so and so is my cousin, but so and so is my cousin too. So
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah,
how it
yeah.
went. So it was just
I,
like
I had your mother
absolutely,
in my house, in my parents' house a few years ago. That's the craziest thing. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Didn't even know you existed.
yep, absolutely. So thank you for everyone who has joined us this evening. Hello, good evening. Some people are just coming on and saying hello.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
okay, how do you think that the conversation surrounding mental health has changed since the pandemic? Do you think it's a little bit like people are more conscious and more aware of their mental health, or do you think it's kind of like the same? And the reason why I'm asking because we know that the pandemic is was just a collective trauma, right? We've all
Yeah.
experienced trauma as a result of the pandemic. We've also had a rise in anxiety and depression since the pandemic. So, how do you think mental health shows up now post pandemic?
Well, I think a lot of people are a lot more aware. Um,
Hmm.
I think people, when you think about the pandemic, yes, I mean, people lost a lot of people. Like we lost a lot of lives during the pandemic, right? So there was a lot of loss there, across the world, right?
Hmm.
And then, right in our backyards, we were dealing with the George Floyd unfortunate
Yeah.
situation, and people were angry, upset.
Yeah.
Also
Hmm.
dealing with the pandemic at the same time, people were losing jobs. People were getting laid off. People were down. Companies were downsizing. I was affected by that. The company that I
Hmm.
was with, like, was downsizing and everything else, right? So it's like everything hit everybody at once, right? Like and it was unfortunate. People couldn't come, like people couldn't go out of the house, or people
Mhm.
went out of the house, but they couldn't really congregate as they would, right? And
Yeah.
as humans, we want connection. We want to go out with people. Like we want that connection with our friends and with our family.
Hmm.
People couldn't do holidays, right? That all affects mental health, right? And so it was very a time where people I felt they had no choice but to say like I'm not well. Like this is
Yeah.
messing with me in ways that it's never messed with me before.
Hmm.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
when it's not human when somebody is in the hospital and you have to look at them from outside, or you have to, right, you can't visit them on their last days, or people were saying that like they had to hold the phone up to like say things like, like
Yeah.
that's
Trauma.
that's
Trauma.
heavy and that's traumatic. People till this day will never forget that they really couldn't say goodbye, right? Because
Yeah.
of the pandemic. So I think we people have gotten very vulnerable during
Hmm.
the pandemic and have been open to say like I'm not okay, right? People lost their marriages in the pandemic.
Yeah.
Just a lot of just different. There's been a lot of loss. So whether it be money, jobs, it could be houses, it could be apartments, and people like civil unrest. It got people talking too about mental health
Hmm.
and about it's like everything was bubbling over,
Hmm.
and it got people talking too, and just expressing themselves a lot more. Um, and which I think now, you see the result. A lot of people are talking more about mental health now, right? Which is an amazing thing. They're
Yeah.
talking about how they're feeling, about loss,
Hmm.
about grief, um, and they're taking it very seriously because they should, especially in our community. It definitely was one of those things that it wasn't taken seriously, so to see, especially for our community, to be able to talk about these things now, um, it's beautiful. But yeah, it definitely started in the pandemic, and you know, it's definitely making there. It's big enough now to where it's a huge spotlight on it. So I'm definitely glad about that.
So I am one of the people that tend to think that we are in a mental health crisis,
Hmm.
right? Um, and I think you've heard me say this before. I remember in the pandemic, I was just like, because I know for me, I had to check on my own mental health, right? Because I
Hmm.
saw myself getting depressed. So
Mm.
there were some things that I had to do to make sure I didn't fall into depression because I couldn't. I was working, but I was working remotely, right? Because the
Hmm.
school system had shut down. So we were doing our job remotely. I was connecting with my kids that I service remotely, right, through a computer. And home and work was the same place. And you had to put some boundaries, right? You had to create some boundaries so you wouldn't kind of fall into this depression or you wouldn't just continuously work when you know that you're supposed to be resting. Um, so, what was some of the boundaries for you in your life that you had to establish during the pandemic in order to make sure that you were constantly being aware of your mental health?
So you know what the pandemic did? So the pandemic, as bad as it was, right? It forced a lot of people, and this is how you become aware.
Mm-hmm.
It forced a lot of people to sit with themselves, me included.
Exactly. Yep.
And it forced, because we're good at being busy.
Yes,
We're,
we
oh,
are.
oh, and we're good at productivity. We're
Oh,
good
yep.
at, oh, I got to do this, I got to do, oh, I got this to do, I got that to do. But a lot of times you're running from yourself. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of times, like you're running from trauma that oh, if I could just stay busy, I don't got to think about it. So let me take on another project at work. Let me do this. Let me do this other thing over here, right? And I can just be busy instead of addressing myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that happened to me was, I think, kind of being one of those ones who uh, the company, it's like I said earlier, downsized. I had a lot more time to myself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um,
Definitely.
and I remember like you sitting there, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, man, I want to do something, but everything closed. And but the more I sat with myself, the more I started to ask. Things started to really seep in my mind about my dad. Because for
Mhm.
people who don't know, like my dad passed in 2016, and
Mhm.
I never dealt with that. You know,
Mhm.
um, I became very busy. Um, I became like, you know what? I gotta just protect my mom. I gotta make sure that she's good. I don't have time to deal with this. I have to make sure that my mom's mental health is good, but it really didn't apply to me,
Yeah.
right? And I had to make sure that like she's good, and I took ownership of her mental health over
Mhm.
my own.
Mhm.
So, and then just staying busy with between that life, this, that, dealing with her grief, not mine, right? Um, and so during the pandemic, I remember just laying on my bed, and I started to ask myself a lot of questions, and things started to come into my head, like about my dad, and I'm like, why am I thinking so much about this?
Mhm.
Like, because I think by that time the pandemic was 2021, right?
Mhm.
2021. No, it was 2020. No, 2020, right? So
It started 2019, the
yes,
March 2019, and then it
2019.
went in from there.
Yes, yes. So
2019.
yeah, so with that, yeah. So I remember it was 2020. I was actually um laying on my bed, and I'm just like, why am I thinking about all of these thoughts? Like these thoughts are just starting to come rapid, and I'm like, this is what happens when I have nothing to do, right? And I'm just like thinking a lot about him and about how like and it's affecting me a lot, and I'm like
Mhm.
uncomfortable, right? Because it's
Mhm.
just like I never sat still enough you know, to really feel,
Yep.
for myself, right?
Yep.
And I'm like sad, and I'm like, man, like this hurts, like this, like, and then it forced me to be like, all right, how can I address this? Because I went through, I mean, we talk about something that happened 3 years ago. At that time, 3 or 4 years ago, and I'm like, why am I now feeling like this? And um, it forced me to get resources. I started researching books on grief. There's a great book by Megan Devine called "It's Okay That You're Not Okay." Yeah, if I could tell you anything that's helped me through that journey, it's that book, and I will forever be grateful for that book. It's not an ad. I'm just being honest. Like that's one of the books that like really helped
Okay.
me.
Can you put that? Can you put that in there? Or do I have to put it in there? The name of the book.
Uh, it's okay.
And while you're doing that, I just want to say, like when you popped in the clubhouse room and you were just saying all the things that was in my head,
Mhm.
literally, I just did a video and posted it on my page. This page that we're on right now about, are you busy? Are you really busy and is life really happening? Or are you making yourself busy because you don't want to deal with your trauma?
Yep.
And here you are, you just said the same thing. Okay. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Like
mhm,
and everybody knows me. I'm very social. I'm always on the go. So also that for me was also a thing because it was like this. Like now I felt like I was constrained a lot because normally I'm like here, there, and everywhere, um, and I'm social by nature. That's just me. So it's like just to be in that space with my own
mhm,
feelings, um,
and thoughts.
yeah,
Yep.
and thoughts.
And thoughts. Yep.
Though that's what really prompted me to say, all right, like how do I address this? You know, and actually reaching out to certain people in my life that I know that have gone through it and hearing how they got through, or just hearing
Mhm,
their stories, asking questions, deep diving
mhm.
with them. Hey, listen, I'm not trying to trigger you, but you know, I just want to know, like,
Yeah.
is what I'm feeling normal, because
Mhm,
I was like, what's going on, and then eventually getting into therapy and things like that. But before that, it was just all right. Well, how do I address it, and how can I help myself with this?
mhm.
Because at this point, I have nothing. I literally have nothing else to. I have nothing else to do. Like
Mhm.
even if I wanted to, there's nowhere I can go, right? Unless I go to the supermarket and I come back home, like I'm sitting with these thoughts, so I think for a lot of us, the good thing about the pandemic, and it's not much good about the pandemic, but it really pushed you to kind of sit with your thoughts, um, to really unpack
Mhm.
some of the things that have been going on in your life, right? Because you have to sit with it, right? Especially when you're idle, you know, and through the research and things like that, and just it's helped me out so much in my grief journey, like with life and certain things. Like as crazy as this sounds, I pushed through more of my mental health journey as far as unpacking things in the pandemic
Pandemic.
than
Yeah.
I did out of it.
Yeah.
Like I really honed in a lot on my own triggers,
Mhm.
my own mental health.
Mhm.
Um, like I really did a lot of work during the pandemic on my own mental health. And it's helped me out, and that's helped me out a lot even to where I am right now. Um, I mean, so if there was anything that was okay about the pandemic was just that for me.
Yeah. I think that was a lot of people's experience because we don't, like you said, we don't want to sit with our stuff. We want to just make ourselves busy. Now, as you know, as I often say, life happens, right? And there's times that we are busy, but then
Yeah.
there's times that we keep piling things on our plate. We make ourselves busy. And it's at some point we have to stop and say, okay, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And am I avoiding something else in my life? And so for you, the pandemic was an opportunity for you to sit with your stuff. And a lot of people, so like even what you said, there's not too many good things that came out of the pandemic. One of the things that I noticed when we were like really starting to come out the pandemic is, like you said, people were divorcing, right? Marriages were ending. Of course, there was a lot of grief and loss going on. But I also noticed that there was a whole lot of books that came out of the pandemic. If you notice people who are publishing their books now, those people were writing in the pandemic because
Smart.
they didn't have nothing else to do. Some people were doing albums in the pandemic, right? Some people were
Hmm.
writing books and they were being published. So
Yeah,
not
businesses
yeah,
businesses businesses were being birthed in the
yeah,
pandemic,
businesses were
So
being
yeah.
birthed.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, so talk about, because that's your experience of being in a pandemic and you being aware of like, hey, this is something that's going on that's coming up for me that I have to address. Right. And
Hmm.
so what you did is you automatically tapped into your resources because we already know you're a resource person. Look at all those books behind you. You got a whole bunch of books over there. So you're a resource person, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
But everybody's not like that. And I want to hone in a little bit on men, right? Men and
Yeah.
mental health, because I know that's one of your specialty areas, right? So, how do you think that mental health impacts men differently than it does women? Or is there a difference and we just assume that there's a difference?
Well, I think when it comes to mental health and men, it's a lot of it is being comfortable, being vulnerable. That's one that's one aspect of it is the vulnerability piece.
Mm-hmm.
And then also it's the comfortability of having a safe space. A lot of men that like there's a lot of people that's in your own family that could be 50, 60 years old that will tell you they never had a safe space, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you've never had a safe space, you can then that means that you can never be what? Vulnerable, right?
Mm.
And which means that you
Okay.
can never really unpack anything, right? So you have a, a generation really full of people who have never unpacked anything. They've just been existing and moving forward. It's I ingest it and I move forward. I ingest it and I move forward. I ingest it and I move forward. And then you wonder why men die early,
I was
right?
going to say,
Like,
because you know that that's an impact there, but I'm glad you mentioned
yeah,
that. Go ahead.
yeah, there's a everything is connected. Like people wonder why men die early. Like whenever you don't have a safe space or you don't have an outlet to be vulnerable, understand stress operates in here and in here, and a lot of times that affects your gut health too. Which is very much important to your health. It's vital to your health and things like that. So what happens with most of us, men, we're gonna either sex it away, or
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna drink it away. And for now, this is for both genders. We're gonna eat it away. Yeah, like you
Yeah.
know what I mean. Like, and I'm
Yeah.
guilty of it. I'll be honest with you. I think I'm a stress eater.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. I
like
am.
I'm
Absolutely.
guilty of that
Yeah.
myself. Some people lose weight, like in their stresses. Like I don't. Like if you see me gain weight, I'm going through something. You know what I'm saying? If you see me lose some weight, then I'm in a good place. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of the opposite for me, right? But it's we do a lot of those things to cope, and a lot
Mm-hmm.
of us, even in business and on corporate jobs, what do? We add more on our plate. We use work for a coping mechanism. We use businesses for a coping mechanism. We use getting money as coping mechanisms, right? Instead of addressing ourselves and addressing the situation. So with men, there's a lot of things for us that when we've had trauma from when you're younger, and the only acceptable, right, emotion that we have as men is anger, right? So it's like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
ooh, like, yeah, like, oh, like, that's sexy, like, he's angry, like, it's anger, right? It's like, ooh, like, he's aggressive, like, he's angry, right? No, I mean, but that's a real thing, right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
that's acceptable. But if he cries, is that manly?
Yeah, because that's what that's what men are taught. They don't show their emotions. They don't cry. So, like you said, when is that safe space created for them? So now they're grown and they're carrying around all this trauma, all this emotion, and they're still seeking safe spaces to share that.
Right. And then people act out, right?
Yep.
So normally, and this is unfortunate, but who sometimes gets the brunt of anger? Normally spouses,
Yeah.
right? Boyfriends,
Mm-hmm.
girlfriends, all right? So in this case, somebody's daughter, right? You might go upside the head because you're angry with what? It may not even be
Mm-hmm.
something, it's not gonna be something that she's done. It could be something that's stemming from other things,
Mm-hmm.
but that you've never unpacked. You've never let it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the girl in front of you, that's your punching bag, right? Or it could be just, you might go into a gang, right? Because you never had acceptance, right? So now that anger, it's okay to to express that anger against another brother, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and so that's the thing. It's like men really never had an acceptable way of expressing themselves, unless it was with this,
Mm-hmm.
or the anger, or the expression,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, it's we like, and if you really think about, even when it comes to relationships and stuff, you ever hear, and like with women, oh man, like he put me in my place, that was sexy, right?
Yeah.
What, right now, not that like I can talk to you like I talk to you crazy or angrily, that's
Mm-hmm.
acceptable. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, that's a real man
Mm-hmm.
right there. But if I tell you I hurt you, no, yeah, no, or that you hurt me, excuse me. So if I say, man, like what you did hurt my feelings,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't put you in your place. Like I'm expressing to you how you made me feel,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's like what's accepted. It's like, oh no, like you want me to put you in your place. But that's me being aggressive. That's me being angry, right? And it's like, ooh, right? But it's like, well, why can't I just tell you calmly, like you really hurt my feelings, or that hurt me, right? Or, I didn't appreciate what just happened,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's not a lot of times. That's not appealing, right? It's like, oh, like I can just punk him, or I can just you see, like there's a lot of those things that. So it's like for a man, it's like in order for me to be a man, I have to lead with an iron fist because that's what women like? Because a lot of men, they operate, all right, to get the woman, I got to do what I got to do,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And I think that's
And
a misconception
it is.
from the woman's point of view. And I can't even say that that is the man's fault. I think it's a misconception of what we feel of what is communicated. So I
Mhm.
think like the average woman doesn't want a man who is a wuss, right? They want a man who's going to, you know, like say what he means and means what he says,
Mhm.
but the way that it's communicated is something totally different, right? It's like, oh, like you said, it's sexy because he put me in my, but what exactly does that mean? So I think that's also part of the work that women have to do, right?
Mhm.
As far as what do you want, and be clear of what you want, because that's not what you're saying. That's even though you may want that, that's not what you're communicating. You're communicating something totally different, right?
Right. Right.
So I just wanted to kind of interject with that. Sorry.
No,
Go ahead.
100%. No, no, you're 100% right. But, you know, it's also just so it's hard for men in mental health when nobody wants to talk. So if if I was never given the permission to express myself, I'm gonna grow up, right? And then you get into these relationships with women or whatever. Okay, why can't he say he loved me, or why can't he say this, or why can't he express his feelings? And I'm like,
Hmm.
just because you got a pretty smile, right, and a nice body, that doesn't mean that he's gonna be open up to you because he loves you or because of that. Like, and you take
Hmm.
it personal. It's
Hmm.
not that. Like, if he was never given that at the age of 4 or 5, now he's 35. He got 30 years of being the same way.
Hmm.
All of a sudden, you think you're gonna mosey on down and say, "Hey, I'm here. Look at me, smile. Yeah, go ahead, express yourself." And he could be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna do that."
Yeah.
No. Do you know
Because
how
he
hard it is
doesn't
to
know
break?
how.
Like,
Yeah.
you just that. Like, do you know how hard it is to break how you've been for 30 years or 20 years, right?
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
it's like, oh, there's this expectation to flip it on like that because I'm here and I'm beautiful and I support you and I love you. So open up to me right now, this instant. That's not reality,
No, it's not.
right? Because these are things that have to have been unpacked or learned behaviors from early. And I'll be honest, the reason why I communicate the way that I do, and I'm not perfect with it, but I'm fine with expressing myself, communicating. But understand, I was given that permission since I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I know some of my friends, they weren't. That's not a thing, right?
Hmm.
So it's very important that you don't shut your kid down early when he's expressing himself. And if you promote healthy communication at an early age and give that young man or that boy room to express, and when he's
Hmm.
upset, don't tell him, don't cry. Like, oh, don't cry, suck it up. That's the worst
Hmm.
thing that you could tell him to do.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that he has to grow up being a crybaby. That's a totally different thing. But
Hmm.
there has to be a happy medium here where you can just let the young boy be able to express himself because understand he's going to have to grow up to be a great communicator for somebody else, for himself, in
Hmm.
business, for himself in a relationship. He's going to have to be able to express himself in a healthy way, right?
Hmm.
And so just give him a head start by allowing him to express himself and how he's feeling open and honestly as he grows up. And each stage of his young man, being a young man to a young adult, it's very important that he gets that permission to do so and to
Hmm.
understand or to recognize who he can have a safe space with, right?
Hmm.
Because growing up, he has his father and his mother, hopefully, right? Whatever the case is, those are the two first people that's going to be his safe space and set
Yes,
the tone
definitely.
for him, or right.
Hmm.
So if he doesn't have that growing up, and the people that birth him, what are the odds that he's going to recognize what that safe space is in
Hmm.
somebody else? See, I
Hmm.
recognize certain things, certain qualities of a safe space because I had them.
Yes.
So I know in my circle, like, yo, this is familiar. Not that it's like mom or dad, but
Hmm.
the characteristics of what a safe space is, I know who they are because I felt this comfortable before. And then I know who's not because I'm not comfortable. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's that's why I'm saying. So if you don't have it early, it's gonna be hard to kind of recognize those things as you get older. And then that's when people shut down a lot because it's like men shut down a lot because it's like, oh well, this person wasn't, I tried to open up one time, and it ain't work. So I'm done.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And a lot of men are like that. You hear that, oh, like I opened up one time and it didn't work out, and right. So it's also knowing what it feels like to have a safe space
Safe space.
at a young
Hmm.
age, so that when you
Hmm.
grow up, you can identify, okay, this is a safe space with one of my homeboys right here. This is cool. And then also now you want to be able to give in turn safe spaces to other people, to your own village. And you
Yeah.
want to offer that. Right? So now you're creating the village. And now when you make others feel safe, it's gonna want to make other people feel safe as well. So it's like it's you're creating these little villages, right, in your own community. You know what I'm saying? But it starts a lot of it starts when you're young. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying?
Hmm.
Especially for men. If you want men to have great mental health, to be communicators, well, why can't he communicate? But it starts when you're a young man. It starts when you're a boy. Those are learned behaviors, right?
Yeah.
So I think that could be the start of for men, um, at least being able to communicate and being in touch with their own emotions. Because if I'm not in touch with my own emotions, how am I going to ever be in touch with my own triggers?
Yeah.
How can I ever
True.
recognize triggers?
Um, so with that being said, we know that there are a lot of men that are walking around that are have not been able to share, their
Mhm.
traumas, their experiences in life because they have not been able to identify a safe space for them to share, for them to unpack that. So I know for my page, I have probably more women than men, right? Followers. So what is it that as women, because I think you knew this question was coming, right? So what is it as women that we can do to create those safe spaces for men to share so they can promote their healing and can promote them being healthy. So if you can share some of that, and then we're going to probably close after that. I want you to share about your page and
Closing
how we
already?
can get your.
Okay, all right. um,
Yeah.
so
So just start with how can we how can we create those safe spaces for men?
I think the first thing is communicating with men. I think the
Mhm.
one thing that I see, that's a consistent, especially online, is
Mhm.
how we talk to men.
Mhm.
Um, it's very much so talking at men, not to men. And as a human being in general, if you talk at me, I'm not gonna listen. That's just human. Like I'm not listening to you, right? So I think if you want to start this being able to understand men, one, and then to build a healthy communications, then I think you got to be able to hear what's being said,
Mhm.
right? And sometimes like we have this thing where you know like once men start expressing their feelings, like the biggest thing once that I think there's been an influx of men expressing themselves recently, right? In podcasts and just different things, TV, whatever. And then the one thing I hear from a lot of women is, "Oh man, they should never give men microphones," right? But I'm like, yeah, because why? Right? Why is that? Men are starting to be vulnerable, and now you want to take it away, right?
Mhm.
You've had the microphone for years. You've been
Mhm.
able to express for years.
Mhm.
You've been able to been told you were right for a very long time. And a
Mhm.
lot of men's stories have never been told, right? So it's
So true.
So you have to one allow, even if you disagree, you have to at least hear the story. You got to at least be open to having dialogue, right? Because if you want to heal our community, heal and heal our homes and do all of those things, right? You got to be able to have this conversation, even if you may not agree. But just because you don't agree, it doesn't make it any less of their truth, right? That
Absolutely.
that's the thing, because that's
Can you
their
say that?
story.
Can you say it again, please? Can you say that again? Just because you don't agree.
Just because you don't agree, it doesn't make it any less their truth,
Yeah.
because that could have happened to them, and you're like, no, 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 and it's like, yeah, yes, that did happen. That's a part of his story,
Yes.
right? So it's there has to be this. It can't just be
Mm-hmm.
this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we got to be able to have conversations that may not be comfortable. And newsflash, I might get in trouble.
Okay. All right.
Women are not always right,
Absolutely not.
which
Absolutely
is
not.
which is okay, right?
Yep.
It's perfectly fine. But when men tell their stories, these are honest. I got stories that'll blow your mind about the
Mm-hmm.
opposition, right? When people would say, "Oh no, but men, but if the reason why she probably did that was because another man probably did." See,
Mm-hmm.
already you're invalidating my story. You're invalidating what I'm saying, because now what you're saying is, oh, the only reason why this person did this is because another man did this to them, and you're already invalidating what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
If you want men to express themselves, it can't be on your dime. It can't be, oh, like, I want men to express themselves, but only the way I want them to
Mm-hmm.
express themselves,
That's
right?
called controlling. That's called controlling.
Right. And I think just being able to have healthy disagreements, I think, is great. But just being willing to give your homeboys, let's just take it here. Give your homeboys safe spaces, give your cousins safe spaces, give your uncles safe spaces, your brothers safe spaces, whoever you have in your family, just begin giving them safe spaces, because 9 times out of 10 you wake up and it's like, oh, this person passed early. What the heck happened? Or this person, God forbid, committed suicide. What happened? He was
Mm-hmm.
always smiling. He was always at the
Mm-hmm.
family event, smiling and dancing and having a good time. Those are the ones. Those are the ones you watch out for. And then you can be like, man, I didn't know he was going through this. I didn't know, man, if I would have known, but did you ask? No,
Yeah.
right? So, I just think, when it comes to men and mental health, just start to give the safe spaces that you would want for yourself, give the lines of communications that you would want for yourself, right? And just be willing to have open and healthy dialogue, even if you don't agree, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
okay, right? But at least we're getting the conversation started. And we don't have to always be so malicious with each other. You know what I'm saying? Calling each other out of our names and stuff like that because we don't agree. Like it's nasty out here. Like I see it online all the time. It's nasty. The way that we communicate with each other, and it breaks my heart, because I wish that, it was different. I wish that a lot of us can show each other the love that we deserve, even if we disagree,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not gonna agree with your family all the time. You're not gonna agree with your mother all the time, your father all the time, whoever, your brother, your sister. So it's the same thing. I may not agree with you, but I still love you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and you can always come talk to me, even if I disagree with you, right? And just starting to kind of just build those healthy lines of communication between us, because we need each other. You know what I'm saying? And we want to be a community. We want to support each other. We want to do a lot of those things, but it starts with how we treat each other too. So um, I think for me, when it comes to women, just learn to just talk to him, not at him, right? And just build healthy lines of communication. Um, Talk about therapy. Like, if you have a good therapist, if you as a woman have a good therapist, create a safe space to where they might open up to you and just say, hey, listen, I've gone to therapy. It's done wonders for me. I can give you a referral. Like just start putting certain positive things in the air. Don't just
Yeah.
start off because you can't just shoot at the hip. Yo, you need therapy, bro. It's like, you know what? All right, I'm not gonna talk to you anymore because that's the thing. I'm not gonna talk to you anymore. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
That was
Like,
going to be, so if you guys have questions, just drop it in the chat. But that was going to be my next question. If as a woman, right, and we want to kind of have the conversation of, hey, I think it may be beneficial for you to go to therapy. How do we, because it's not just like, hey, I think you need to go to therapy, right? It
that ain't
doesn't, it's
gonna work.
not that simple. And particularly if we don't really know the man, right? And we're just like starting a relationship with them. It's like, hey, and that's anybody.
Yeah.
I think you need to go to therapy. Like,
Well,
that's
who
not
are
the
you
way
to
to
say
do
that?
it.
Yeah, who
So,
are you to tell me that?
like, who are you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, how do we start to have, because that conversation is very different when you're having that conversation with a man than a woman. At least I think it is, right? I, so you tell me. So how do we start to have that conversation?
Building trust. Because if I don't think that you have my best interest, I'm not listening to anything you say. We could be cool, like, and we can go to the club. We can do whatever, get brunch, do all that stuff. You know what I mean? Like, cool, right? But
Yeah.
like me listening to you, like, nah, I'm not gonna do it. There has to be a level of trust to where I say this person has my best interest at heart,
Mm-hmm.
and but how you build that is a safe space. Having
And
conversations with them to where they trust you with things that they
mhm.
wouldn't trust with other people. Because now, once you get into that realm, it's like, and when you say, and now when you have that person and they say, hey, something that's really helped me out is, I've gone to therapy, right? And now it's like, oh, well, I trust this person. They probably wouldn't steer me wrong,
Mm-hmm.
right? So okay, right, and it's like anything else. A referral goes a long way. I don't want to be out here looking for no therapist, yo. Oh, no problem. I have a I have a referral, and then those referrals now come with trust because it's like, oh, well, she goes there. I trust her. It's like going to a mechanic, yo. You got a good mechanic, bro?
Yeah.
Because I ain't trying to like get scammed. All right, cool. Here's a referral. Bet.
Yeah.
So now I know since you trust him, I gotta
Yeah.
go to him.
Yeah.
Right? Same thing with
Definitely.
barbers. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, you trust him with your hair, bro?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah, all right, you see
Mm-hmm.
my friend. All right, cool. So now I'm gonna go. So it's really establishing that trust. And if you have a therapist, share experiences. Don't just say, hey, go to therapy. Share experiences. Hey, I've gone to therapy. Here's what it's done for me. Let me
Yeah.
show you the benefits. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to know the benefits of the features and benefits of everything. TVs, computers. All right. So what are the features and what are the benefits? Fab. Right? Features and
Mm-hmm.
benefits. Great. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with therapy. What are the benefits? What are the features? What has it done for you that you think that it's going to be so good for me?
That's so good
Right?
for you. Yeah.
So, and, but with those building blocks, you know, your friend, your cousin, your whoever it is, your boyfriend or whatever might be like, you know what? Okay. And then even if so, he might say, um, can do you want to go with me? Or not, or do you want to have a conference with me? Maybe he might feel comfortable, right? If you're there. Maybe not, right? But
Mm-hmm.
that's an option. Say, hey, listen, even if you want me to go with you, I'll go with you, right? Like that's real. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. And
Everybody
that's
wants
being
to,
supportive. That's
yeah,
being
like
supportive.
everybody. When stuff hit the fan, you see who's who. Because and when somebody wants to take that journey with you and say, yo, I'll go, and I'll be a support to you, whatever you need me to
Mm-hmm.
do. That's the work. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Especially in relationships. Everybody wants to be on the, oh, he gonna fly me here, or we gonna be on a vacation and we gonna take the pictures and we gonna do all that. Nah, yeah, the work is, hey, listen, if we're gonna go, then I'll go with you. I'll support you in this town.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it's at. That's the foundations and that's the building blocks for it. You know what I'm saying? So So for me, it's really establishing trust, building trust with that person. That's how you can reach that person, right? And then to where when you make a recommendation, they take it a little more seriously. You know what I'm saying? Because you've already had that, you know. And another thing I'll say is this: if you're in church, things like that,
Mm-hmm.
God is beautiful. God is beautiful. God is a beautiful thing now. I'm gonna tell you God's a beautiful thing now, right? That's
Yes.
There's no doubt about it. God is good, and everybody say all the time, God is good. Yes, yes, indeed.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But get yourself some therapy. If you're in the pulpit, if you're in the church, if you're in the pews, and people open up to you and they're going through something like this, and you can see, don't just tell them, "Oh, I pray for you, God bless," and send them on their way.
Mm-hmm.
Don't don't tell them, just pray about it a little harder. You
Mm-hmm.
can tell them that, okay, great, yeah, yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
let me give you some resources too.
Yeah. And I think that's a misconception that Christians have. People of God have, people who are in the church, people who have a walk with God. There's a misconception that they can't do both. They can't have
No.
a relationship with God and they can't go to therapy too. They absolutely can, and the two work together. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you for even bringing that up.
Because,
So I go ahead.
and
I'm
I'll just say
sorry.
one last thing. So when it comes, because
Mhm.
look, if somebody came to church and said, "Yo, man, man, I just I'm looking for a new job." Yo, you know what you probably do? Yo, I know somebody that's hiring. You know, maybe look, let me get your resume. I can get your resume out to them. Like, yo,
Mhm.
people would do that. No, no doubt in church. Like, yo, yeah, I got somebody. Yeah, you wouldn't tell them. You know what? You want a new job? I think you need to go pray about it a little longer. You
Yeah.
gonna want to put some action behind it and be like, yeah, I know somebody. Give that same energy to their mental health because you can tell people when people go to church. Like, I've seen it. People go to church, they're going there wanting a word because they're suffering, right?
Mhm.
So they
Mhm.
go to church wanting a word, like yearning for the word, yearning for something that's going to give them what? Hope,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
But the problem is they get it, right? And they're excited for 2 or 3 hours and they're inspired. And then they go home depressed. And people tell them, well, then you just need to go read your Bible some more.
Yeah.
That's fine. No problem. But
Mhm.
say, hey, I know that I have some other good resources that might can help you as well. Because a lot of people that, especially that sitting next to you in the pews, and they say, "Hi, slap your neighbor, give him a high five." Yeah, give him a pamphlet for therapy too.
Yeah.
Okay, because there are people who are suffering in these pews. There are people who are suffering, like laying out on the altar crying. Why? Because they're going through stuff,
Yeah.
like real life,
Definitely.
like stuff, and it's
Real.
like, and all we offer them.
And more so now. More so
Yeah.
now.
And all
Yeah.
we offer them is a 2, 3, 4, 5 hour sermon, praise and worship, and I'm gonna pat you on the butt and send you on your way. God bless.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it's like that's cool, but resources like that they can take with them and say, "Hey, I got this also." But you know what? Sister Bernadine said, "Yo, she gave me this pamphlet. You know what I mean, for a therapist. I think I'm gonna go sign up for it. Like it could be amazing, right? Because that's also the work. That's also the work. Pray
Mm-hmm.
and faith without works is what? It's
It's
dead.
that. It's that. Yeah.
Work has to be done on your mental health. But for some reason, when it comes to mental health, no, we can't do the work on that. We got to just pray about that quiet. Don't nobody talk about it. You know what I'm saying? And so when you got your brothers in Christ and your sisters in Christ, help them along the way. Yes, read the Bible. You got Bible study. You got all types of. You got every type of thing on Sunday, Monday, Thursday. You got praise and worship on one day. You got Bible study on another day. You got everything right on a lot of different days, right? But they go back to like reality, and they're
Mm-hmm.
still suffering.
Yeah. It's still hard. It's challenging. Yeah.
Yes, resources,
So
people.
does your shirt say God and therapy do both? Because I just noticed that.
Yes,
Okay. So with
yes.
that being said, please tell us how we can find
your merchandise and where we can order. So let us know about that, and then let us know about your where we can find you on different platforms and any upcoming events that you
Hmm.
want to share.
Yeah, yeah. So, as far as my merch line, it's in my bio. The Tillman Unlimited collection. You can
Okay.
go there, check out. The merch is all affirmation inspired. It's just really
Mm-hmm.
just things that kind of get you on your day. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, and it's at the uh Tillman collection. Just at there, and then all the links are there. So you can go there and shop. Things like that, and reach
Okay.
out to me if you have any questions. Conversations of the heart. It's on YouTube. So if you're looking for full episodes, it's everywhere. On all audio podcast platforms, YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
Terence Tillman. You'll see all the videos there. The full length videos are there. Um, so yeah, and just reach out to me if you want to have conversations about being a guest on my show. We can
Mm-hmm.
have conversations um, about that, but it's all positive. So if it's not about that, don't hit me up. Um, Facebook, same thing. Facebook, T-Tail
Okay.
Inspires.
Okay.
TikTok, at T-Tail Inspires. Yeah, that's pretty much where you can find me. And
Okay.
DM me if you have any questions. I'm always here.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, sir. I appreciate it. And thank you for
Appreciate
everyone
you.
who joined us this evening, and have a great night.
Hey,
Bye.
just one more thing.
Wait,
One more
one more
thing.
thing. One more thing.
Keep supporting you. You know what I'm saying? You're doing amazing. Um, I see what you're doing here with these healing conversations.
Thank
It's
you.
definitely amazing. Keep doing your thing. I know we talked about this like when you first started, you wanted to do stuff like this, and now you're
Yeah.
doing stuff like this. Go out and get the book. I know something else is coming. I'm not gonna say nothing else about that, but
Yeah.
just go support, you know, um, this beautiful young black queen here. Because she's doing amazing things, and just keep up the amazing work. I'm super proud of you. Proud to call
Thank
you
you so
family
much.
now. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Um,
Absolutely.
and yeah, just keep doing your thing for sure.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. Good night.
Peace.